What is up everyone, Movie Wayne back again with another collection video, and today is going to be my entire horror movie collection. Now, I have done this video before on the channel, but that was way over a year ago now when I first started YouTube, and I have added so many more horror films to the collection that I thought it was time for a refresh, and a lot of people did seem to enjoy that video. I loved making it. Horror is my personal favourite genre, always has been and probably always will be, so I can't wait to get stuck into this and give my quick fire thoughts on each title. I won't spend too long on each one because the video will go on forever, and as you can tell behind me, the shelves are a little bit different. That's because I've took a big chunk of Blu-rays out and put them next to me in this pile. I think I own more horror movies than any other genre. There's over 200 movies here, easily. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So these are mostly in alphabetical order. The first movie up here is a double pack, in fact, and that is 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. Danny Boyle take on the zombie genre, and it takes place in London, a British movie. And I remember first watching this and I couldn't believe how good it was filmed, because the whole of London is just empty. And I heard that they had to do this at like 4 in the morning, and cornered off all the streets and everything, and they only had a few hours each time to film this. But it's a really good film. Cillian Murphy wakes up in a hospital and a zombie outbreak has happened. And 28 Weeks Later is not a bad movie either. I've heard rumblings that there's meant to be a third movie coming. I'd be down for that, but I am a big fan of the zombie genre. I do own a few more zombie films, as you will see in this video, but really, really good films, solid movies. I recommend them if you haven't seen them yet. Sorry about that. Next up, we have 30 Days of Night. This is a Josh Hartnett vampire film. I've only seen it once, and I remember really liking it, but my memory is very, very vague of it. I must have seen it about 10 years ago now. But I did enjoy it, what I seen. I probably need a rewatch. I love a good vampire film. I do think there's a lot more vampire films out there better than this, but this is still decent and worth a watch. Next up, we do have some of the best movies of all time, and that is Alien Quadrilogy. Now, the first two are where it's at. The first Alien movie is more horror orientated than any other. Now, there might be some films in here, by the way, that have horror elements, but some people may not consider them horror films, but the majority are pure horror. Like the first Alien film, well, it's horror sci-fi, but there is a lot of horror in there. And Alien is probably one of the greatest sequels of all time, in my top 5 personal movies ever. But these are just fantastic films. Alien 3 isn't bad. I think it gets a lot of hate. David Fincher doesn't like it, understandably so, when you see the history that's gone on with it. Alien Resurrection isn't great, but watchable. But the first 2 Alien movies are where it's at. Love, love, love both of them. Next up is probably my least favourite Alien film, and that is the 4K of Alien Covenant. I wasn't a big fan of Prometheus, and this was just only slightly better because of some of the scenes towards the end, like the shower scene and stuff. But I don't like the direction Ridley Scott took, where he took this franchise. It just wasn't for me. I just wish we would have got more movies like the first 2 Aliens, even Alien 3, even Alien Resurrection for that matter. But no, he went in a totally different direction here. But I would love to see another one of them films done really well, just not the direction that Ridley Scott decided to take. All the Boys Love Mandy Lane. Now, I do remember this going for very, very cheap, and I kept seeing it on sale, so I picked it up. I think this was more of an independent horror movie, and it's got a good twist at the end. It's about this girl who's been targeted by someone, and everyone around her dies and stuff, and I think it's like a crush or something comes after her, but it's a good twist at the end. It's not a bad film. Next up, possibly the best werewolf movie ever in most people's opinion. I think it's the second best, but that is An American Werewolf in London. Fantastic movie. I don't own the Arrow version, but I've owned this one for quite a while. Some scary scenes in this, especially the dream sequence and stuff. I'm not a big fan of dream sequences, but when they're done well like this, oh, they really creep me out. The transformation scene that David has here, becoming the werewolf, is fantastic. Really, really well filmed. Jenny Agutter is another welcome side character in this. Really, really good movie. It's a solid, solid horror film, and some people may have it in their top 10 ever, and that is understandable. Next up is more of a thriller, if you like, but I suppose it is a horror, and that is American Psycho. Christian Bale in one of his most outrageous roles. It's a strange movie, this one. You don't quite know what's happening here and there, but Christian Bale is fantastic in this. I love how jealous he gets when his business partners have better business cards than him, and he just stares at it and goes, "It even has a watermark." But there's so many good scenes in this. I remember when he has to kill Jared Leto in this, and there's just a big axe coming through his head, and I was like, "Oh, that is some gore there." I try not to mention too many spoilers here, but there is a little warning there. Next up is Apollo 18. A found footage film that takes place on Mars, or the moon, was it? I can't quite remember now, but I thought it was not very well shot. It's kind of hard to see at times, just this creature that comes after this team that lands. I can't quite remember if it's the moon or... Yes, the moon. But I didn't love this too much. I've seen way better found footage films than this. It seemed very, very low budget as well, which is understandable for a found footage film. But next up is Audition. Now, this doesn't really seem like a horror movie until the last 30 minutes, and there's some really, really hard to watch scenes in this. It's basically about this guy who auditions for a wife. He has a lot of women coming to audition for him to be his wife, this rich guy. And things start to take a turn later on in the movie. But I won't say too much. However, I do highly recommend that you watch this Asian cinema movie. Really, really good. Really, really good movie. Next up is a bit of a horror comedy. And that is Beetlejuice. I just included this because it has a lot of Halloween-y type decor in there. It's not bad, but I'm not a massive fan of this film. Like some people, Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice is hilarious. But it's got some decent decent moments. I love the singing scene at the dinner table. That's great. Next up is a Alfred Hitchcock movie, The Birds. Now, this will probably be in my top 3 Alfred Hitchcock films, to be honest. I know a lot of people like Rear Window and Vertigo, but I think for me, it's North by Northwest, Psycho, and this. I really, really like this film. Some creepy moments where the birds are just waiting around to attack and stuff. I thought this was a really good film, and really well filmed by Alfred Hitchcock. I highly recommend this. Next up, we do have Blade, and at one point in my life, this was my favourite film of all time, about Wesley Snipes as a vampire hunter. Marvel really, really brought comic book movies back with this, because Batman and Robin may have killed the genre, but this one brought them back, and it showed how cool he could be. Blade is a fantastic character, and the CGI is a little bit dated in here and there, but I still think this is a brilliant film. Still definitely watchable today. Looking forward to the new take, but I heard they're not going to be R-rated, which is kind of a downer. One of the best opening scenes to a movie there. Next up is Blade 2. A lot of people do prefer this film. I personally don't, but this is definitely more towards horror and focuses more on the vampires and stuff. I remember liking this. I just like the first one a little bit better, but this is a solid sequel. Some may say one of the best horror sequels of all time. Next up is sponsored by Apple, this movie, and that is Blade Trinity, yes. I think it's Jessica Biel in this, is it? I can't quite remember. I think it's Jessica Biel, yes it is. She plays this iPod all the time, and you can just tell Apple have give the movie company some money to just throw that in there. She's constantly zooming in on her iPad and stuff, on her iPod. I didn't love this third movie. The first two are definitely better. It has its moments, but definitely the weakest of the three. Ryan Reynolds is in there too. Next up is the movie that terrified me more than anything when I first watched this, and that is the Blair Witch Project. I could not sleep all night. I watched this when it first come to VHS, when we rented it from the video shop. I hadn't seen anything like this before. It was the first found footage movie that I watched. I thought it was real, and it scared the living daylights out of me. It's still quite creepy today. I mean, there's a lot of found footage out there now, but this still works, I feel. Great, great horror film. Probably in my top 10 of all time. Next up is Blair Witch. Now, I think this may be a sequel to that one. I can't quite remember, but I do remember enjoying this movie. It's not great or anything like that, but it's definitely watchable. I see it as a remake, to be honest. I mean, it's like their own take on it, but I think it does play into being a sequel to that first film. But I enjoyed this when I watched it. I thought it was going to be terrible, but it was quite good. Next up is Blood Rage. This is a very low budget slasher, if you like, that is kind of dated now, but I still have fun with this. Basically about two twins, and one of them goes to a mental asylum because a murder has happened, and the other one is just living freely. And when the other one comes out, the murders start to happen again. But which one really is doing all the killing? Good movie. I think it all takes place on Thanksgiving, but nice little addition from Arrow there. Next up is The Bone Collector. Some may consider this a thriller. I can't quite remember too much about this movie, in all honesty. But I remember thinking it was okay. Denzel Washington and Angelina Jolie do really give good performances. But like I said, my memory is a little fuzzy on that one there. Next up is The Box. Now, this is a good concept. It's basically Cameron Diaz can push this button or open this box or something, and she will become rich, but someone she doesn't know will die. So it's a good concept. I think it could have been executed a little bit better there, but it's not bad. Frank Lagalla is in this, and James Marsden and Cameron Diaz. Not a bad movie. It just could have been done a little bit better, I feel. Next up is The Boy. Now, I only first watched this in preparation for The Boy 2, which came out last year. And I heard a lot of bad things about this, but I quite enjoyed it. The Boy 2 wasn't very good at all, which I don't know. I thought this was okay. You know, I had a good time with it. Nothing special or anything like that, but definitely watchable if you're a horror fan. Next up is Burial Ground, one of the worst horror movies I own. I know a lot of people may like this, but I just didn't think it was good at all. Yeah, I do like 80s cheese or 70s zombie movies that are like very cheesy and stuff. I watched one last night, to be honest, which I'll get to in a minute. But I just didn't like this movie. I thought it was really, really bad. Next up is The Burning, and in my opinion, better than all of those Friday the 13th films, which I do like, but this is the same concept, a killer at a camp. I think they play a trick on this maintenance guy who works there, and it goes wrong, so he comes back to punish all the kids who played this trick on him. Really, really good film. I highly recommend this. The Burning is a great slasher. Next up, we do have Cabin in the Woods. I only watched this for the first time a few months ago, and I couldn't believe that third act. It just went in a totally different direction. I will try to avoid spoilers. I'm sorry if anyone said I thought I spoiled American Psycho before, but I will try to avoid that. But this, it's a really good modern horror. I don't love it as much as some people, but the third act, it's worth watching just for that. Next up is a movie my fiance watched on the plane going to Thailand, and she kept going on about it, how good it was, so I picked it up, and that was The Call with Halle Berry. And this is basically, she works at an emergency dispatch unit that take emergency calls, and this girl has been kidnapped, and she's in the boot of a car, and she's on the phone to Halle Berry. Really, really good thriller horror. Nothing like, I don't think it was good as what my fiance was going on, but it's still a good movie. Next up, one of the best horrors of all time, in my opinion, and in my top 10 for sure, and that is Candyman. I can't wait for the remake, even though I love this to death, but this is pure horror to me. I mean, I still can't say his name in the mirror 5 times. Virginia Madsen gives a good performance as our protagonist here, and Tony Todd is excellent as Candyman. He is mesmerising when he speaks, and I just think it's a very, very good movie. Great story. You know, it's just got everything a horror movie should have. Gore, you know, creepy moments, excellent villain. Really, really good. I highly recommend this if you haven't seen it, especially in preparation for the new one that's coming. Next up is the sequel, Candyman Farewell to the Flesh. I didn't love this one as much. It's watchable, but it goes for too many jump scares. It's like Jump Scare City, which is, yeah, kind of annoying. I always thought that was Virginia Madsen on the cover, but it's not. And I don't even think she's in this film, unless it's like a flashback scene or whatever. I can't quite remember now. But it's watchable. It's more of a 5 or 6 out of 10 movie. Nothing special there. Next up is Carrie, a brilliant movie, Brian De Palma film, and this is would you call it an antagonist? I don't know, because some of the things she does in this would not be acceptable, but you get behind her because she is bullied so badly in this movie. Her mother as well is one of the most evil characters. I mean, I don't even know if she intends to be at times. She's very over religious and stuff, but she was a fascinating character. But I love Carrie as a character in this. Really, really good film. I've only seen it the once, but it sticks in the memory. You know, fantastic movie. Next up is Castle Freak. Not a movie I love, to be honest. I always used to see this in the video shop to rent, and when it came to Blu-ray, I thought, I'm going to grab that because I always wanted to watch it. It's okay, it's watchable, but it's just about this freak that lives in the castle who's very disfigured and stuff. But I think it's not very well directed, in all honesty. Next up is The Children, about a group of two families who go to a vacation in a lodge or whatever, and the kids start to turn a little bit sinister there. Decent film, very low budget, but it works for what it is. I mean, it's not bad at all. I think that's more of a straight to VOD movie. Next up, we have a big franchise coming out, one of my favourite horror franchises. I am really wanting to do a collaboration video on this with someone one day on the whole franchise, because I've recently watched them and they stick in the memory really well. Child's Play, the first one. Now, I think this is a really good film. There's a lot of tension. You don't quite know if Andy Barclay, who's being terrorised by this doll, is telling the truth or not. And when we actually see Chucky come alive, it's great. I don't think they quite know what they had here with this character, because he's hardly in the film much. I mean, it's mainly the third act where you see a lot of Chucky. A lot of it is build-up and tension. But when they got to this movie, they definitely knew what they had with the character. What a villain Chucky is. This is him at his best. This is one of the best slasher sequels ever, in my opinion. One of the best horror sequels. I've heard a lot of people prefer the first one and stuff. Understandable. If you like that, that's up to you. But for me, this is where Chucky shines the most. I just love this movie. It's full of great kills, great one-liners. Chucky is a badass in this. I love that movie. Next up is Child's Play 3. Not a bad one. This was always very, very hard to find here in the UK when it was back on video, because a murder happened over here that shocked the nation, really, and apparently the killers watched Child's Play 3, so a lot of video shops took it off the shelves, so it's really hard to get hold of, but you can get it easily now. And this all takes place in a military camp when Andy Barclay's a bit older. Chucky is great in this again. Not as good as he is in 2, but he's still good. I mean, it's a really good Chucky movie. I really like that one. I know I'm in the minority there because a lot of people don't like it. Next up is Bride of Chucky. Now, this is a movie I don't really love as much as a lot of people. I do think Tiffany was a welcome character. She was good, but I don't know. I think it's too gothic styled for me, and I don't know. I really couldn't take to this one that much, to be honest, and I hated the cop. Next up is Seed of Chucky. A lot of people will say this is one of the worst movies ever made. I totally disagree. I don't even think it's the worst in the franchise. I actually prefer this over Bride of Chucky. Although a lot of you might turn the video off right now. I could probably imagine going to cinema at the time and being disappointed, because it is totally different to what we've had beforehand. It's very comedy orientated. Some of the script is all over the place, but I had a fun time with this when I watched it. I thought it was really good. Next up is Curse of Chucky. Now, this is for me one of the best Chucky movies out there. They really got the franchise back on track for a lot of people, even though I like Seed of Chucky, but Don Mancini was going in all different directions there. But Curse of Chucky, it's a prequel. I think it takes place between Child's Play 3 and Bride of Chucky, and that was a good decision, I thought. I think this is more of a straight-to-VOD movie, but I liked it. Thought it was good. All takes place in a house, a big house there, big manor. Next up is Cult of Chucky, the worst in the franchise for me. I don't think it was a good idea to have all these Chuckies running around and stuff. One of the kills in this just tries to be one of the kills out of Bride of Chucky. Didn't work. Yeah, it's not a good movie in my opinion. And next up we do have the remake. I didn't think this was that bad at all. They tried to do Chucky as more of a robotic doll because he has like a memory chip inside and stuff. It worked for me. I understand a lot of people don't like this, but yeah, I thought it was a decent remake. I had fun with it. I've only seen it once at the cinema. Next up is Chronicle. Borderline horror, I don't know, but it's about these 3 teenagers who start to get powers, and one of them becomes a little bit, of a villainous character, basically, and starts to overuse his powers when he shouldn't do and stuff. It's a found footage film, a really, really well done one as well. I think Michael B. Jordan's in this movie, but I thought it was a good film. Really, I liked the found footage horror. Yeah. Found footage genre, and that one was a really good one. Next up is Climax. This is about a bunch of people at a party, and the punch gets spiked, and they don't know who it is, and everyone is just tripping out on drugs. Gaspar Noé made this movie, who also made Irreversible, I believe, which is one of the most hard-hitting films ever. But I recommend this. It's something like you've never seen before. There's a crazy dance routine at the start. This worked for me. I thought it was really good. Next up is City of the Living Dead. I didn't like this film too much, to be honest. This is an old Arrow version. I think the character of the priest in this, he just kind of shows up every now and again and pulls this stupid face. I didn't like this film, I'm not going to lie. I thought it was really boring. Not much happens. Next up is Christine, a movie I watched for the first time last year, and I loved it. I think the main character is it Artie or something? I can't quite remember his full name, but I love the character arc of him. The way this car changes him. He's bullied at school and everyone picks on him, but then he just becomes this so unlikable character because everyone starts to like him and he becomes very popular, but he's an asshole basically. And John Carpenter put a great score in there and stuff. Especially when the car is chasing people, just a dum, 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 dum. John Carpenter does simple scores at times, but they work. Really, really good movie. I love the look of the Plymouth Fury, how red it is. It just shines. I really like this film. I done a top 20 first time watches of 2020, and this was actually in that, so it shows how much I like that film. Next up is nearly dropped that. Another found footage film, The Chernobyl Diaries, where a group of people go to Chernobyl on a visiting like a tourist attraction basically for the day, and we find out that some sinister things are going on there, and bad things start to happen. I've heard a lot of people say this movie is offensive and stuff. I just go into the movie and watch it. I don't get into all that, but I had a good time with this. I thought it was really good. Next up is The Conjuring. Who can forget that scene with the clap hands in the basement and stuff, and the tennis ball just dropping? Scary, scary stuff. I really like this film. I thought it had a good story. Vera Farmiga is one of my favourite actresses, and I loved her in this. Decent horror movie. Doesn't go too stupid or anything like that towards the end. I really enjoyed this. A lot of people will say this is one of the best modern horror movies, and I wouldn't argue with them. Next up, we do have The Collector. Now, this is a brutal movie. It's about this guy who basically wants to rob a house, and when he gets there, someone has got there before him and set a load of deadly traps around. It's like he was the burglar was anticipating the burglar, basically, but he's using them for all these death traps. I think it tried to sort of cash in on the Saw franchise a little bit, but when I watched it, it wasn't like that at all. I mean, it is brutal and, very, very gory with all the traps and stuff, but it's its own thing. And I thought it was quite a clever film. I enjoyed this one. I think there's a third coming out, The Collection or something. And by the way, I do have The Conjuring 2 on order. It's in the post. It's not here yet. So that'll be in my latest pickup video. Next up, we do have The Craft, one of my favourite films ever. I've watched this so many times. I love the 4 girls in this. They all have, good character personalities and stuff. I love how crazy Nancy starts going, and it's one of them 90s films that just works for the time period. And I have seen The Craft Legacy, but it's just not as good as this one. I love this movie. It's really, really good. I highly recommend The Craft if you haven't seen it. Next up is The Crazies, the Arrow version. I didn't like this film at all. I don't know how people think this is entertaining and stuff, because I just thought it was so bad. But if you like it, fair enough. Don't listen to me. But one of Romero's weaker movies, if not his weakest. I just did not enjoy this film whatsoever. However, I did enjoy this one. The remake, Timothy Olyphant is in this, and he is a great actor. This is much more entertaining, and just flows better for me. It's not a mess or all over the place. It's a decent horror film, and I think it's like a baseball park where I think this is infected, just walks right onto it. Decent movie. I like that one. Way better than the original. Next up is Creepshow 2. I will leave all my Blu-ray and 4K updates and unboxings down below. I have done an unboxing of this. I'm all my other collection videos as well, but I have done an unboxing of this if you want to check it out. It's a nice thick box set from Arrow. I have not seen Creepshow 1. It's not released here in the UK, I don't think, but I have seen this one and I did like it. I loved the look of, I think it's Tom Savini who's the creep. Loved that, the way he just throws the magazines out the van. It was really creepy. I loved the second story more than anything. I think it's The Raft. Really, really good concept that. The first one isn't bad either, with the Indian guy who's just going around taking revenge. The hitchhiker one was the weakest of the three for me. I thought the character was quite annoying of the hitchhiker, but this is a good, solid, all-round anthology movie. I need to get some more horror anthology films, I think. Next up is Deliverance. I haven't seen this for a very long time. I just remember the squeal like a pig boy. That's all I remember. Burt Reynolds, who sadly passed away. I remember liking it, but not loving it, if you get me. It's kind of dated, I feel now. Next up, we do have two of the greatest zombie movies ever made. And this one, for me, is the best zombie movie ever made. And it's in my top 5 horror films of all time. That is Dawn of the Dead. I know there's a big 4K box set out there now, but I don't really upgrade too much to 4K if I own the Blu-ray. There are exceptions I will make. But if I don't own a movie and it has a 4K, I will definitely pick up the 4K. But I am thinking about upgrading this one, to be honest, because that set is amazing. But what more can you say? It all takes place in a shopping mall, one of the best locations for a horror movie ever, if not the best. I just love the characters in this. I love some of the death scenes. The zombies don't look fantastic, but it works. Definitely Romero's best film for me, and just the best zombie movie of all time. Just definitely, just Keenan's dad from Keenan and Kel is going around, shot, with a sniper rifle, taking zombies out. What more do you want there? Next up is Day of the Dead, the third in the Romero trilogy, and this is a solid movie. It all takes place in a bunker, but what shines for me more than anything in this film is the villain, who also sadly passed, I'm afraid. But I think his name's Joseph Pilato, and he is brilliant in this movie. He's worse than the zombies. But they're doing tests in this bunker on a zombie, trying to give intelligence to this zombie called Bub. That's a good little aspect of the movie, but it all just works so well in this underground bunker. The feeling of isolation and stuff. Next up is more of an action movie, but I did include it, and that is Deep Blue Sea. There are some really horrible moments in this film. Samuel L. Jackson is all over the posters there, but we all know what happened there if you've seen this movie. It's probably my second favourite shark film ever. I really do enjoy this film. I think it's just one you can sit back to and have a fun time with. Not, it's a bit over the top and stuff, but I really like Deep Blue Sea. I love a good shark film. Next up is Dead Snow. I think this is maybe a Swedish movie. Don't quote me on that, I might be wrong, but it's about a bunch of Nazi zombies. What more do you want there? Very, very fun film. I really like this. This guy here is like leading the army of the dead. It's a good take. I know there's a Dead Snow 2 out there. I should really pick that up because I enjoyed that one. Next up is a film I didn't really like at all. That is Demonic Toys. Don't think the toys look good at all. Special effects were really bad. the characters were so annoying. You know, I didn't like any of them. And it all takes place in this toy store, which is a good location. Oh no, I think it might be a warehouse actually full of toys. Good location, but just doesn't work well at all. I didn't like that film. I mainly bought it because I'm a fan of the Child's Play series, so I thought it might be a little bit like that. Next up is Deranged. Now, this is about the old guy from Home Alone who shovels the snow. Going crazy when he's lost his mum because he's lived with his mum all his life. And he starts, like, doing some unspeakable things. I think he's, like, keeping bodies of dead women in his house and stuff. I thought this was going to be terrible, but it was okay. It worked for me. It's a little bit dated. Next up is an underrated movie called Devil. This all takes place in an elevator, and every time the lights go out, one of the characters in the elevator dies, and you don't quite know who it is, and one of these characters is in fact the devil. And it's a really, really well made film, good ending and stuff. If you like something a little bit different, I do think this is a good one to watch. Next up is The Devil's Rejects. Unfortunately, I don't own House of a Thousand Corpses, which to me is the slightly better film because it's not released here in the UK. I should really start to buy Region A things because I do have a Region A player. Well, I do have an Xbox One, which is Region A, and the PS4 is, I think. So I could watch them. And I've got to realise that not every film is going to be released in the UK. I've been waiting for the Halloween box set for, 12 years now? But The Devil's Rejects is a solid sequel. It's about mainly a cop who was just on a vengeful spree because his brother got killed by the Firefly family, and he is out to kill this family, basically, who are very, very sinister in their own way. Sid Haig is in this. He has that Captain Spaulding, what a character he is. Bill Moseley. Rob Zombie's wife, Sherry Moon Zombie, of course, is in this because she's in every one of his movies. Next up is a sequel to one of the greatest horror films of all time, and that is Doctor Sleep. What ruined it for me in this was the CGI and stuff, but it's a good story. You know, it does try to be different to the original, sticks to the book. And I really did like Rose the Hat in this. I thought she was the best thing about the movie. Rebecca Ferguson is such a good actress. I love everything she's in. And this is one of my favourite roles of her. This and what Isabella, I think her name is, in Mission Impossible, are two favourites of mine that she plays. But she is so good in this movie. There's a horrible scene involving a child death here. And it's very hard to watch, to be honest. I mean, even for horror hounds alike, it might be a little bit difficult to see that. But Ewan McGregor is really good in this as Danny Lloyd. It's a decent film. The third act all goes back to, you know, the hotel, the Overlook Hotel. So if you're a Shining fan, you might as well give this a go just to see what it's all about and stuff. Next up is Don't Breathe. This is about three burglars who decide to rob this blind guy's house, but they get more than they bargained for. He's an ex-army vet. He just... Basically, if you come into his home, he's going to go after you. And I think there's a Don't Breathe 2 coming out, which I'm really looking forward to. Can't say too much on this film because I might give some stuff away, but I recommend it. It's a good modern horror. Next up is Don't Look Now, and I am in the minority here with a lot of people, but I don't like this movie. I thought it was very boring. Good ending, but that's about it. For me, it was just... it was very boring, yeah. Like I said, not much happens. Maybe I'll have to give it a rewatch, but when I watched this, I just wasn't into it at all. Next up is Don't Torture a Duckling, a film by Lucio Fulci. I can't quite remember if he made Don't Look Now. No, Don't Look Now. I can't quite remember. I should really know. No, maybe I'm just thinking things there. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up. Don't Torture the Duckling is about a bunch of kids in a village that go missing, and there's a killer on the loose. Maybe more of a thriller, but there is some, you know, kill moments and stuff. Some kill scenes involving quite a bit of blood and stuff. So I put it in the horror section. I think it is horror thriller, but I remember thinking this was okay. Nothing special, but a decent watch. Decent little story there. Next up is Drag Me to Hell, bit of a horror comedy. I thought the Gypsy Woman in this was quite creepy, but another movie that I don't love as much as some people. It's okay, it's watchable, it's a fun time. But basically this gypsy puts a curse on this woman who won't lend her some money from the bank. It's okay, not bad. Next up is a very, very underrated British horror film called Eden Lake. Now, some bad shit happens in this movie. It's hard to watch at times. Basically about a couple who go and camp out by the lake, and these kids start to terrorise them. Now, I do think British movies have that little bit of difference to them. And you don't quite know what to expect at times. The ending of this film is rough. Next up, some people will consider this the best horror movie of all time, and that is The Exorcist. Now, I don't know if it's in my top 10 or anything, but I do appreciate how masterful of a film it is. I can imagine at the time this being absolutely terrifying because religion was out more then, wasn't it? I mean, you didn't really hear of atheists and stuff back then. Reagan, a iconic horror movie character, and we all remember this fantastic poster. I mean, just iconic, that, isn't it? That poster is iconic. Next up, The Evil Dead. Now, I remember really liking this film. I think I prefer it over the second one. I mean, a lot of people do like the second, but I'll get to that one in a minute. It's just about a bunch of teens really going to a cabin, and a demon comes along and possesses one of them. There's a weird scene in this involving a tree. You all know what I mean if you've seen this, but Bruce Campbell as Ash was a great character, and you can see why he's got his own spin-off TV show now and everything. But good movie. I think that's Sam Raimi, yeah. Next up, Evil Dead 2. Now, this is more of a comedy horror type film. It sort of forgets the first one and just does its own thing, which was weird to see back then in the 80s, I feel. I haven't seen it for a very long time, but we can all remember the hand, can't we? That zombie hand that goes after everyone. As you can see on the back there, it's got Bruce Campbell's chokehold on him. I would like to rewatch these two again. It's been a while. Next up is another 90s movie like The Craft. That is a little bit underappreciated, and that is The Faculty, about an alien invasion at this school that starts to take over the students and the teachers. It's a good film. You don't know who the student alien is till the end of the film, but I love the cast in this. You got Jordana Brewster, Josh Hartnett, Usher's in there, Elijah Wood's in there as well. I like this film. It's really, really a fun watch, and we got a lot of them teen high school horrors, in the 90s, didn't we? And that is one of the best ones. Next up is Fertile Ground. I haven't seen this for a very long time. I picked it up because it was cheap, but I remember not liking it at all. Next up is The Fly. Jeff Goldblum turning into this monstrous creature is fascinating to watch. You feel really sorry for the guy, to be honest. Such a well-made film, and yeah, it's a good concept. A guy who comes up with teleportation, but as he does, a fly goes into the teleport device and starts to change him. Really, really good movie by David Cronenberg. I had such a good time with this. Next up is The Fog by John Carpenter. I didn't love this movie when I first seen it. Look, I do think John Carpenter is a brilliant director, but I do feel like people overrate some of his movies, and I do think this might be one of them. But I will have to give it a rewatch, because a lot of people have this as a beloved movie. It's about a bunch of pirates, I think, coming to this little town or seaside town and taking over when this big mist appears. Next up is probably the most underrated film of all time, in my opinion, and that is Frailty. Now, Bill Paxton directed and stars in this film, and basically he comes home one day from work and tells his kids that an angel has visited them at work, and they have to go out and kill these demons, but these demons are disguised as humans, and one of his sons believes him, and the other one thinks he's absolutely batshit crazy, and you don't know which side to take, and they go out and start killing these demons. But what unfolds is absolutely amazing. One of the best endings to a film I have ever seen. I highly, highly recommend this. It's borderline thriller horror, but Matthew McConaughey is in there too, so what more do you need? Next up is Freddy vs. Jason, one of the weakest Elm Street movies, or Friday the 13th movies, if you like. I was so hyped for this when it was coming out back in the day because I was a big Nightmare on Elm Street fan, a big Friday the 13th fan, and it was such a disappointment. I watched it again recently, and the CGI is terrible. This snake in this doesn't even look good as the one in the Elm Street 3 movie. It's okay, but I don't like it too much, to be honest. Next up is the Friday the 13th remake. Now, I don't own any other Friday the 13th movies because they haven't been released here in the UK properly as a big set. However, there is that Shock Factory release in America, and I think I'm just going to pick it up because I'm not holding my breath for the full set here in the UK. This remake isn't too bad, actually. It's sort of the first 4 films in one go, which was a good idea. The only thing I don't like is that Jason takes someone hostage here. That's not the Jason I know. But apart from that, it's a good slasher film. Next up is From Dusk Till Dawn. Talk about a genre change halfway through. Brilliant movie. Brilliant vampire film. That is almost a gangster movie as well. Quentin Tarantino is great in this. He's so weird, so creepy, and just a complete scumbag. But you can't fault his performance or anything, or his character that he's given here. George Clooney's best role, in my opinion. Brilliant movie, brilliant film. I don't know which half I like better, to be honest. Next up is The Gate. I think this is from 1984. I think these 2 kids release a demon gate in the back garden, but a lot of people do like this film. I just didn't like it, to be honest. I thought it was rubbish. Next up is Get Out on 4K, Jordan Peele's debut movie. I have a strong desire to go back and revisit this, but the ending was so predictable for me. Not even the ending, the middle of the movie, really. I knew what was coming, and it reminded me of Hostel a little bit. Not the gore or anything called the kills, but the way they're like sort of bidding on this guy. I think it was a good film, but I don't love it as much as everyone else. However, I do want to go back and rewatch that and give another, get my thoughts right on it properly. Next up is Gremlins, Christmas horror movie, if you like. Such a fun time. Just these seeing these gremlins running about causing mayhem. It's a fun movie, and how cute is Gizmo? Next up, I do prefer this one. That is Gremlins 2, The New Batch. All takes place in a skyscraper, but I just think it's more of a bizarre, out there film with so many funny moments. And it's a bigger movie, if you like. And there's some weird things like Hulk Hogan saying, "Put Gremlins 2 back on now." It's weird, but it works for me. Fun film. I do prefer this one over the first one. I know not everyone is the same. Next up is The Gruesome Twosome. It's a weird 60-minute movie, this one. It's about a mum and his son, who just basically run this wig shop, but they're scalping women. That's how they get their wigs. It's only a 60-minute long film, I think, but all she ever says in this film is she talks to a cat that's not even alive, it's stuffed, and all she ever says to it is, "Isn't that right, Napoleon?" Because the cat's called Napoleon. Next up, one of the best horror films of all time, Halloween. I watched this in October like I do every year, and it still stands up. I actually feel like this film gets better the more I watched it. Michael Myers, it's such an iconic horror movie character, and this all just works for me, It's just a really good film. I love when Jamie Lee Curtis is just walking home and he's watching her every move and stuff. The music by Carpenter is amazing. So yeah. Next up is the only other Halloween movie I own, and that is Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie. This main reason for this is because we haven't got most of these released here in the UK, which is really annoying. Just bring a bloody Halloween box set out, please. I remember liking this. It's very, very brutal. I know a lot of people hate it and think it's the worst in the franchise. I don't think it's anywhere near the best, but I don't think it's the worst. There is worse Halloween films. Somewhere in the middle there. But very, very brutal film. Michael is so bad in that, so brutal. Next up is Happy Death Day, a Groundhog type horror movie where this girl is just reliving the same day over and over and someone wants to kill her. I like the concept, it worked for me, and I thought I had such a fun time with this. Next up is Happy Death Day to You. This is definitely more sci-fi comedy than horror, but I included it because the first one is there. Still a fun film though, you know. There's a montage scene where this girl, I forgot her name. What's her name? Her name's Tree in the movie. I forgot the actress, but she is just throwing herself out of an aeroplane, throwing herself in a bunch of saw blades and stuff. And I was thinking, even if I knew I was going to wake up, that'd still be hard to do. Next up is Hannibal, the sequel to Silence of the Lambs. Decent sequel. Gary Oldman is unrecognisable in this movie. I think he got attacked by Hannibal himself, and he's so disfigured and stuff. The makeup design on him is great. I love... she's not as good as the Claire Starling in the original, obviously, but... what's her name? I forgot her name. Julia... Bear with me. I'm really sorry. Julianne Moore. I think she was really good as Claire Starling. Obviously not as good, like I said, as... I forgot her damn name in the first one. I'll get to it in a minute. But a good sequel. All takes place mostly in Italy and stuff. But it worked for me. Very, very slow paced, but good build up. Next up is Hannibal Rising. A lot of people hate this film. It's a prequel, but it takes place in the war times basically of Hannibal when he's younger and he's like 18 and stuff. I didn't think it was that bad. No, I didn't. A lot of people do hate it though, so, but I thought it was okay. This is a movie, The Haunting, that scared the life out of me as a kid. I remember my dad just had it on when I was like 5, and I heard all this banging and stuff, and you don't really see anything, but it terrified the life out of me. I watched it again a couple of years ago, and it wasn't like that at all. I think this is aged badly, to be honest. It's okay. Next up was one in my top 10 movies of 2020, and that is Host, a found footage film, a Shudder original. This is only about 60 minutes long. Some creepy moments in this, but it's all basically taking place on a webcam and stuff. I thought it was really well done, and there was only really one character out the whole lot that I didn't like, but a movie that worked for me, and a good found footage horror film from the modern era. Next up, we do have a box set, and that is Hellraiser 1, 2, and 3 from Arrow Video. Now, I watched these not long ago, to be honest. The first one is a very, very good horror movie. Just show you really quick. There's Hellraiser. Really, really good horror film about this guy who basically needs these bodies to feed on in order to come back as a human, because he's like this skeleton. He was confined to hell, but he's found a way back to Earth, and he needs the help of this woman called Julia. She's a really sinister character and stuff. And next we have Hellraiser 2, which I thought was one of the best sequels ever when I was younger, but upon rewatch it was a bit of a mess, and a lot of things happening that I was just getting kind of lost with. And we do have Hellraiser 3 on Earth. I kind of don't know which one I prefer now out of these two Hellraiser sequels, to be honest. Thought this one was a little bit more straightforward, but not as much as Pinhead in there and stuff. The thing is with Pinhead, I don't think he's a very good villain, to be honest. He's very easily, you know, just brushed aside in all these movies. But next up is probably the best horror movie made in the past 20 years, maybe. That is Hereditary. Not for everyone, of course, but Ari Aster, what a directional debut this is. Just really, really well made horror film. Doesn't rely on jump scares and stuff. Just is very, very creepy and such a good story. I highly recommend this. Can't say you're gonna love it, but everyone should see this movie. The first, something that happens halfway in there is just horrifying. It really is. Next up we have The Hills Have Eyes. I thought this was okay, but it's very, very dated now. It's about a bunch of inbred cannibals living in the hills who terrorise some people whose cars broke down. Hills Have Eyes remake, much better film in my opinion. One of the best remakes out there. maybe I should do a top 10 horror remakes. Some brutal moments in this, especially the moment where all these, these crazy people living in the hills storm the caravan there. Brutal moments. Very, very violent. Really, really good horror film. I recommend it. Next up is The Hills Have Eyes 2, which is the sequel to the remake. Not as good, but watchable. I don't think it was all bad or anything like that. There's just a certain character who lives in the hills, and they tried to make him like a good guy, and it didn't quite work for me, that aspect of the film, but I don't blame them for doing something different. Next up is Hollow Man, the 90s version, if you like, of what we got to the Invisible Man. It's the same type of thing. This guy finds a way to become invisible, but it turns him crazy. It all takes place in an underground laboratory and stuff. A movie by Paul Verhoeven, who's one of my favourite directors. He, of course, made RoboCop and Starship Troopers, Basic Instinct. This isn't his best film, but it's still an enjoyable one. Very, very fun watch. Elizabeth Shue, really good in this. And Kevin Bacon as the Hollow Man guy. Decent movie. Next up is one of the best horror films ever. Very, very underrated to some people, because I know a lot of people haven't seen this. And that is The Hitcher, The Highway Killer. This is a German digibook edition. Rutger Hauer in this is amazing. He is so scary. Just on the edge of your seat stuff. Every scene he's in, he's just picked up by this young kid, and he doesn't leave him alone. He's everywhere this young kid goes on this motorway, Rutger Hauer shows up and just terrorizes the life out of him. If you haven't seen this, give it a go. You will love it, trust me. Next up is A Horrible Way to Die. Very, very low budget, straight to VOD film. I thought it was pretty bad. It was not very well directed. Couldn't hardly see a thing. And it's just a story about nothing. It just didn't make sense to me. Next up, we have a bit of a franchise here. This is Hostel. Sort of like Saw, where people use the term torture porn, but what even does that mean? Basically about a group of guys in Amsterdam. They get told to go to the best brothels and stuff in Slovakia, so they go, and it's all a big setup, and there is death for business going on there. It's a good movie, it really is. Some horrible moments and stuff. I really like this film, I think it's great. But I do prefer Hostel Part 2, actually. This is definitely, I think there's some more brutal moments in this one, but you get to see more of the organisation and stuff and how it works. I like this film. Definitely one of the best sequels out there. Best horror sequels anyway. Some might prefer the first, but I think this is slightly better. Next up is Hostel Part 3, another straight-to-VOD film, but I don't think this was bad at all. Basically, this all takes place in Las Vegas, and people are betting on what instruments the killer is going to use and stuff. And there's a horrible moment where he takes someone's face off and just shows it to the audience, like the face like that, and everyone's clapping and stuff. Really, really horrible moments, but good third movie. Just not as on the budget as the other ones, really. Next up is House by the Cemetery. I don't like this film at all, and the mum is just so annoying. All she ever says is Bob. That's all she ever says to a young kid. I didn't like this film. It was stupid. Next up, we do have another franchise, and that is House. Fun 80s cheesy horror comedy. Nothing great. Some of the costume design is kind of laughable. You can just see it's someone in a suit and stuff. This neighbour just pops over when he wants. I was like, go away. But not bad. However, I do prefer this next one in the franchise, House 2. Probably my most underrated gem, my guilty pleasure film. It's ridiculous, but it's amazing. It just works so well. The grandfather in this, he's been dead for like 100 years or something. He's come back and he's like a zombie walking around, but walking and talking, and it's like an adventure film, this one. There's a dog that is half caterpillar. Sits at the dinner table with them. There's a velociraptor that comes from another realm, and that's at the dinner table, and it's got like a bib on and stuff. What a film. What a film that is. Next up is House 3. This wasn't really meant to be part of the franchise. This is actually called The Horror Show, but they just slapped House 3 on there. about a killer who comes back from execution, I believe, and terrorises this cop who caught him. There's another movie in the collection down the line like that, the same story, which I'll get to in a bit. Next up is House 4, The Repossession. Definitely better than House 3. But not anything special or anything, but I do especially like the pizza that comes alive. It's got like a face on it and stuff. They're ridiculous films, but they're fun ones. Next up is another box set, and that is I Know What You Did Last Summer trilogy. I'll just get them out each one by one. I Know What You Did Last Summer. I revisited this not long ago. I have done a full review on this. I'll leave me horror revisited playlist down below as well. There's only about 8 horror reviews in there, but if you want to check them out, feel free. I like this. It's a good story concept. It was definitely better this time watching it than what I remembered, because there was a lot of films like that coming out back then, just horror in the 90s, and I got kind of tired of them when I was a kid. Going back to this now, I appreciate it a lot more, but I thought Jennifer Love Hewitt in this was really good. I'm Sarah Michelle Gellar, best I've seen her. There was a big thing about her, but I weren't really into Buffy and stuff back in the day, but I loved her in this. Next up we do have I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Another one I have done a review for. It's a weaker sequel, but the kills are amped up. There's better kills and stuff, but there's some shocking decisions in here by the characters. Some of the most shocking decisions I have ever seen from movie characters in my life. And next up we have I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. Not as bad as I thought it was going to be, or what some people say. I have a full review for this coming soon. I'm working on it now. It should be out in the next week or two. And then I'm going to rank all 3 of these movies, actually. But I won't speak too much about that one because I haven't done my review yet. That is I Know What You Did Last Summer, the box set. Next up, we have Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The Arrow released. I didn't love this film too much. I thought it was really boring. I know a lot of people like this and think it's great, but didn't really do it for me, to be honest. Next up is another film that a lot of people like, and I just thought it was boring again, kind of in the same vein as Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That is Interview with a Vampire. I think it's Tom Cruise who's just been living for about 1,000 years or something. I didn't like the setting of the old times and stuff. It didn't work for me at all. Next up is The Incredible Mountain Man. A B movie, really, if you like. This was okay, nothing special, but watchable if you like cheesy horror movies type / sci-fi. And we're on a bit of a roll here with not great movies, because this is in my top 5 worst films of all time, and that is Island of Death. Spoke about this one a few times on the channel. I hated the 2 main characters. They were just terrible characters. I just hated everything they'd done. I know you're not meant to like them and stuff, but there's a moment where this guy's hung from a helicopter in this, and you can just tell it's a big paper mache. Not a very well directed film by Nico Mastrakis. Really bad film. That was like banned in the UK and everything. One of the reasons I wanted to watch it, I was so let down. Next up is Incident in a Ghostland. Now this is one of the most clever horror films I've seen in a while. It'll all make sense at the end and stuff, but really horrific. 120 minutes there. These 2 horrible, like, villainous characters going around in an ice cream truck or something. I think it's an ice cream truck. I won't say too much, but I recommend this film. It's really good. Next up is Insidious, one of the movies that scared me more than any other at the time. Still quite terrifying now when you watch it. About the demons possessing, you think it's the house, but really they're possessing the young boy who lives in the house, because when they move, it all still carries on happening. But I like this film. Another good modern horror from the last 20 years. Next up is Insidious 2. Not one that I particularly like too much, but there was a moment in this, and my fiance always brings it up, when I jumped. My leg just went. But I don't think it's as strong as the first one, but it's a decent enough sequel. Next up is Insidious 3. I definitely think this is better than Insidious 2. Very underrated movie. Lee Whannell, who made The Invisible Man, made this. And there's a moment where someone just gets hit by a truck and you don't see it coming at all. But I thought this was a really good movie. And one of the most underrated horror films out there. I don't own Insidious: The Last Key, I'm afraid. Next up, speaking of Lee Wanell and The Invisible Man, it is The Invisible Man on 4K. I loved this film. This was in my top 10 movies of 2020. Elizabeth Moss was great in this. Didn't see that performance coming at all, but it was a very, very good take on the Invisible Man character. It just worked for me. Everything worked. Sometimes the scenes where you can't even see anything, but you know he's in the room and stuff. I highly recommend this. Next up is, I'll show this one first. I Spit on Your Grave from 1980s, I think. This was banned in the UK and everything. There's some shocking kill scenes in this. You sort of champion Jennifer, as I think her name's Jennifer, on her revenge, but some of the things she's doing are quite brutal. Decent movie, nothing special, but next up is I Spit on Your Grave, the remake. Some brutal scenes in this as well, in the same vein, a revenge type flick. Decent remake, it worked. Next up is Stephen King's It, the miniseries. Now, Tim Curry is great in this, one of my most favourite horror movie characters. I used to rewatch this all the time as a kid, even if it's 3 hours long, it doesn't matter. I still used to just rewatch it over and over. I love the little stories going on between the kids. They all have their own little segment of, you know, their confrontation with the clown, really. But this is one of my favourite horror films ever. One that I've rewatched a lot of. Next up is the remake of It. As you can see, I do have Pennywise on my t-shirt as well. I liked this. The story was great and everything, but the CGI really did piss me off. But Bill Skarsgård was good, but it's the dynamic, the chemistry between all the kids in this that really make this film for me. Kind of like Stranger Things meets Pennywise. Well, it's sort of done in the same type of Stranger Things vibe, isn't it? But yeah. Next up we have It Chapter 2. Very, very disappointing sequel. If CGI was bad in the first one, it's overloaded in this. I liked the opening 10 minutes. I thought that was a really great start to the movie, and then it just goes downhill. There's a moment in the miniseries where Beverly Marsh meets this woman in a flat, this old woman, and it's so creepy in that film, but here they just put this CGI mess on it, and I was like, what the fuck is that? It disappointed me, that film. Next up is It Follows, a very, very clever horror film. Basically, it's like, if an STD could kill you and follow you everywhere, this is it. And she basically has to have sex and pass on the curse, because this thing is just following her around, and it can take the shape or form of any human or anything it wants, and it just follows it everywhere, and if it catches it, it's going to kill her. Really, really good film. Really, really good movie. Next up is Jacob's Ladder. I don't remember too much about this. I just remember a lot of dream type scenes happening. I can't quite remember too much about it though. I think Tim Robbins is in this. I'll have to give that one a rewatch. Sorry, memory's gone on it. Next up is another shark movie. I'll take this J card off. Now you might have heard of this, but it's Jaws. I don't know if any of you heard of it. But one of the best films ever made. I watched this not long ago because a lot of my YouTuber friends have this as their #1 film of all time, and I hadn't seen it for ages. So I rewatched it and I couldn't stop thinking about it for days. I didn't realise how good that line is, the quote, "You're gonna need a bigger boat," but that is delivered to perfection. Just works so well. Jaws is a great movie. Next up, Kill List, another British underrated film really. These two guys are hired to take out these three sinister people really by this agency, but bad things start to happen because I won't say too much, but the guy off the Football Factory is in this. I forgot his name. Neil Maskell. And I don't think you'll quite see what's going to happen in this film. It's best going in blind, really. Decent movie. Clever one. Next up is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. One of the most fun times I've ever had watching a film. I love this. The clowns are ridiculous. The outfits are ridiculous. People are wrapped up in cotton candy. But it just works so well. It's as ridiculous as the film name is. The film title is. But what a fun time. Really, really good film. Bit of a cult following now, hasn't it? Land of the Dead, another sorry about the stick appeal there, another George A. Romero film, but I didn't like this too much. I don't know what the hell was going on with this movie. I think the movie studios interfered a little bit with George Romero, what he was trying to do, but I thought this was kind of weak. Next up is The Last Exorcism, a great found footage horror about a priest basically who is just doing fake exorcisms and conning people into money, people who think they've been possessed. And he says it's all in the mind basically, so when I do this possession they'll think it's gone, but one is really possessed and it sort of bites him in the arse. Good movie, good found footage film, good ending. Next up is the Arrow version of Last House on the Left. I have only seen this film once years ago, way back on DVD. I haven't watched this version yet. Wes Craven's Last House on the Left. I remember being a little bit disappointed by it because I was expecting something a bit different, but I'll have to give this one a rewatch. But I did remember preferring this one, The Last House on the Left remake. It's got Jesse from Breaking Bad in there. I'm terrible with names today, aren't I? But brutal at times. Brutal. What happens to him is not very nice at all. Next up is Let the Right One In. I think this is a Swedish vampire film about this young kid who's bullied all the time, and he befriends a vampire who lives next door to him, this young girl, and she tries to sort of help him out. Won't say too much more on that. I don't own Let Me In, which is the American version. Next up is Life on 4K. I was really surprised by this. It's about a group of characters in a space station, but this small little creature is starting to grow and grow, and then it starts to pick them off one by one. Kind of a little bit like Alien, but it's its own thing as well. Great ending. Very, very underrated horror movie. I highly recommend it. Next up is another British horror movie, and this one takes place in Scotland, I believe. That is A Lonely Place to Die. This is kind of like the most recent film I watched called Red Dot, where this couple are lost in the wilderness and a sniper is out there trying to pick them off. I remember this being really, really good actually. I really enjoyed it. Next up is borderline horror, but there is some very creepy moments in this movie, and that is Lost Highway by David Lynch. It's the only Lynch film I picked in here, but I think this is more his horror type version more than anything. I can't even... Basically, it's about a couple, and they're getting videotapes sent to the front door of this person watching what their every move is. Now, I won't say too much more because something happens that you don't expect, but it's very, very David Lynch. However, I couldn't take my eyes off this. There is a character in this who is so creepy, this little guy, and you'll know what I mean when you see him. He meets up with the Bill Pullman, who's the main character of that film, at a party, and it creeped me the hell out. Next up is the best vampire film ever made for me, The Lost Boys. Seen this so many times, a film by Joel Schumacher, and I just love the characters. Kiefer Sutherland as the main vampire, really. Just great, honestly. It's got 80s written all over it. The music is fantastic. I still believe. Love that guy. What a movie this is. If you haven't seen The Lost Boys, you've got to. It's such a fun time. Next up is Madman. This is another camp style movie where someone comes after them at a cabin or a camp. I didn't like this one too much. I thought it was hard to see actually. I don't think Arrow done the best job on this. Very low budget. Not great. Next up is Maniac Cop. This is about a lot of killings happening in New York by a guy who's disguised as a cop, so he sort of lures the women in by thinking they're going to be protected and stuff. This is a really, really good film. I thought it was such a fun time, and I know there's a 2 and a 3. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah, I know there's a 2 and 3, but they're not out on Blu-ray here. But I really had a good time with this, and this has got Bruce Campbell in as well. Next up is one of the most shocking movies ever made, Martyrs. Now, this just sets you up straight away in the first 10 minutes for the brutalness that's ahead, and what this movie turned out to be is something really, really clever. I didn't see it coming whatsoever. Just a brutal movie. Honestly, If you want something a little bit different with your horror, try this film. Next up is not really a horror film, but I included it because I've got a couple of shark films in here, and that is The Meg on 4K. Jason Statham fighting a massive giant shark. What's not to love? And that's exactly what it says on the back there, coincidentally. Ridiculous film. I loved when the young kid's on the raft and he goes, "Oh my god," and looks in the distance, and you think the shark's coming, and he's just looking at a bunch of women in bikinis, having a good time. But I had fun with that film. It was okay. Next up is Lords of Chaos, another one that I typed in on IMDb to see if it is a horror or not, and it said it is. This is a true story about a band in Norway, I think, and what happened with them. Rory Culkin is in this, and he sort of invents black metal, but they get a new member to the band and things start to go really, really heavy. There's so many violent moments in this movie. It's so good. This also appeared in my top 20 first time watches of 2020. Such a good time and such a gripping story. I highly recommend this. So glad I own that one. Next up is another Ari Aster film, the second one that he made to Hereditary, and that is Midsummer. You're going to love or hate this. I loved it. It's a horror film that takes place in broad daylight. Florence Pugh is great in this. Solid 9 out of 10 movie for me. I really, really enjoyed this. And I get why some people don't like it, but for me it all worked. The cinematography is unbelievable. Ari Aster has been rumored now to not want to do any more horror movies, but I think that would be a massive mistake because the two he's made are probably the best horror films from the past 10 years. Next up is Microwave Massacre. This is a guy who is sick of his wife's cooking, so he kills her and then cooks her in a microwave. And his friends at work really like the taste of it as well. They don't know it's her, so he starts bringing in pieces for them. It's a ridiculous film, but I really liked it. I had such a fun time with this. Next up is a movie that I watched for the first time last year, and it came number one on my... Did it come number one or two? Yeah, I think it come number one. And it was the best movie I watched last year for the first time that wasn't a 2020 movie. And that is Misery. Wow. I was so enthralled in this story. I just couldn't get enough of it. Couldn't take my eyes off the screen. Kathy Bates with an unbelievable performance. One of the best performances I've ever seen. Basically, she is a fan of this writer who has crashed a car near her house, and she takes him in and looks after him. But she is batshit crazy and she doesn't really want him to leave. Just watch it. This might be a 10 out of 10 movie for me, and I don't give many films a 10 out of 10, but I'm gonna rewatch it just to make sure. But definitely one of the best films I've ever seen. Next up is Mist. This is about a mist that takes over like a fog that takes over this city, and creatures live in this fog. So a bunch of characters take shelter at a supermarket. Another Stephen King film, by the way. The ending to this is so upsetting, and it holds no bars. Next up is Mother's Day, another underrated horror movie in my opinion. It's about this crazy family basically, and they've got these bunch of characters tied up in the basement. I think it's worth a watch. Next up is The Mutilator. Now this is, if you want B-movie cheese, this is it. This is all over, stamped all over its face. Very low budget, but I thought it was okay. There's a moment where a girl is killed in a swimming pool, and the killer decides to get undressed and get in his bathing costume basically to kill her. It's not a bad film. It's not bad. Not great though. Next up is Night of the Living Dead. I maybe should put this next to Dawn of the Dead and Day of the Dead, shouldn't I? But there you go. I haven't because it's a different edition and stuff. I've only seen this once or twice, but I remember thinking it was decent. This really started the whole zombie movie subgenre, didn't it? I mean, this is where it all started properly anyway. You might argue that Frankenstein and stuff are horror films, but this is the zombies we know and love today started right here. So one of the most important horror movies ever made when you think about it. Next up is Nightmare City. Not a movie I love at all. Another zombie film, but this isn't like the zombies we know and love. Basically, this is just a bunch of weird, disfigured people running around with machine guns that are meant to be zombies. However, what I will say is, if you just like a montage of kills, this has got over 50 or 60 people getting killed in this. It's just every 2 minutes. But I didn't like it. I thought it was stupid and ridiculous. Next up, my favourite horror franchise of all time. What got me into horror in the first place? A Nightmare on Elm Street. When I heard a bunch of kids talking about this Freddy Krueger character at school, I instantly wanted to watch it. My mum never let me watch it for years later, but when I finally got to it, I just fell in love with the franchise. Nightmare on Elm Street is a very, very good horror movie. The second one is a personal favourite. I think it gets stamped, a lot of people don't like it, but I think it's a decent sequel. Very, very different though, compared to the rest of the franchise. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3, my favourite one in the whole, the whole series there. It was the first one I watched. The first one my mum and dad let me watch, really. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4 starts to go a little bit stupid, really. Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, it's watchable, but there's just a lot of random things happening. Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, one of the worst movies ever made. I hate Freddy in that. He's very Looney Tunes type. It's like a cartoon character, but there's also a character called Tracy in that, and I think she's the worst character in the whole franchise. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, probably the second best movie in the whole franchise, really. Not one that I'm going to rewatch over and over, but very, very well done. Very, very clever. So, yeah. Next up is A Nightmare on Elm Street, the remake. I don't think this is as bad as what most people say it is, but it's not a patch on some of them ones. However, I do think it's better than Freddy's Dead and Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5, really. Maybe even Part 4. Yeah, I don't think it's that bad, to be honest. James Earl Healy is not as good as Robert Englund. No, Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. Next up is Oculus. Heard this is an underrated film, so I give it a go, and it's basically about a cursed mirror, and every household that it's in over the years, the families start to go crazy and murders start to happen and stuff. Highly recommend this. Karen Gillan is in this, who you might remember from the Jumanji films. She's great in this movie, but I thought this was going to be bad. Now, the guy who makes this made Dr. Sleep, Mike Flanagan. I'm hit and miss with him because, like I said, the overuse of his CGI sometimes. However, I think this is his best film. So, next up is the Omen trilogy. Recently watched this not long ago, and the Omen is definitely the best one. Takes very dark turns here and there, especially with that nurse who throws herself out the window for Damien, if you like. Damien 2 isn't a bad sequel, actually. Damien is more like a 14-year-old or something. I can't remember, he's in military camp or something. And Damien 3 is actually Sam Neill as Damien when he's older. It's actually a strong trilogy. You think 2 and 3 might be bad because the first one was so good, but they're not. They're decent movies. Next up, One Missed Call. Terrible film. One of the worst horror movies I've ever seen. Can't remember too much about it, to be honest, but just remember hating it. I don't watch it. Next up is Orphan. Really underrated movie, actually. I feel like this is very, very clever, especially the ending. Great twist. I think there's an Orphan 2 meant to be coming as well, which will be interesting. But yeah, not a bad film, actually. If you want something a little bit different, give it a go. Next up is The Orphanage. Now, a lot of people do like this film, but I thought it was pretty boring. I think I might have to give it a rewatch, though, because it's held in very high regard, but it just wasn't working for me, I'm afraid. Can't even remember too much what it's about. Next up is The Others, one of Nicole Kidman's best ever performances. Her and her 2 kids see ghastly goings on in this big mansion that they live in, and it's such a comfort horror movie, if you like. I mean, I can't quite explain that, but it's just good to, sit there and chill to and watch. But this has got a big twist in it, which I won't reveal, but if you haven't seen it, get ready for something great. The way it unfolds and everything. Really, really good horror film, that. Next up, we do have a franchise coming up, and this is a very strong franchise in my opinion, because I think I had fun with all these films. Paranormal Activity, a movie that made so much money from the budget they had. Found footage, all takes place in a house with cameras set up everywhere and stuff. Some really, really creepy some really, really creepy moments in this. Not for the faint of heart, definitely. Next up is Paranormal Activity 2. Picks up with the last one left off, I think. I think it's the next day or something. I prefer this one to the first one. There's some shocking moments involving someone's neck getting broke. But I really, really like this film. Again, all done from cameras in the house and stuff. Next up is Paranormal Activity 3. Now we do learn a bit more about the family from the first two films here and the origins of this family and stuff. Really good ending. There's a moment where you get the typical ghost with a sheet over its head, but it works so well. There's a camera in that movie that moves left to right, very, very slowly, but 1 minute you see something and when it goes back you don't. Next up is Paranormal Activity 4. I think this was probably one of the weakest in the franchise, but still watchable. However, there's a lot of advertising for the Xbox Kinect that didn't even do so well in real life anyway. But it was okay. It was okay. Next up, Paranormal Activity, the marked ones. I think this goes to a totally different location in, like, was it in Mexico or something? But I remember liking this, actually. This definitely was better than 4. It picked the franchise up again for me. Thought that was really good. And next up is Paranormal Activity, the Ghost Dimension. Now, you can tell there's a bit of a budget's gone into this. The special effects, there's more gone into them and stuff. Doesn't mean it's a better film or anything, but I think it was better than 4. Next up is The People Under the Stairs. This is another movie I have reviewed fully on the channel. All spoilers, talk spoilers and everything. Like I said, that review playlist is down below. I love this film. I think it's so good. The family in this, the mum and dad, are just weird. It's so strange. This little house they live in with all these booby traps and people living in the walls and stuff. It's a good film. It really is. I really recommend it. Next up is another horror box set coming up, and I recently watched all these just last year. Phantasm. Now, this is not going to be for everyone. We've got Phantasm 1, which is a really good film, actually, but it's very, very hard to follow. I'm not going to lie, it is. The whole franchise is. I did get what was going on, but when it got to like part 4 and 5, I was like, okay, what is going on here? But Phantasm, not bad. There's a scene in this involving a metal spiked ball, and it's such a good kill scene. Just give me 1 second there. I'll just put it back in the box as I go. Next up, we do have, where are you? Phantasm 2. Phantasm 2. I thought this was maybe better, if not on par with the first one. More of a road trip film, from what I remember. Some decent, kill scenes and stuff. Fun movie, not bad. Next up is Phantasm 3. This has got a couple of wacky characters in here. But I remember liking this one as well. I didn't think it was too bad. I think 1 and 2 are better though. Next up is Phantasm 4 Oblivion. The main problem with this is they throw a lot of cut out scenes that didn't make the first movie and throw them in here. So basically deleted scenes and stuff and try to make a movie out of it. So half of it is deleted scenes from the first film, or 25% of it, and the rest of it is just this thrown together mishmash stupid story, and I couldn't follow it whatsoever. I was so lost in this film. This is where the franchise started to just make no sense to me. Next up is Phantasm 5 Ravager. I do think it was better than 4, but some weird cinematography here. Some of the special effects are so strange to look at. But it was better than 4, but I was very, very lost. Next up, we do have Pieces. I think this all takes place at a school. And someone's going around the school killing everyone. I think, anyway. Didn't watch it too long ago, but I think this was okay. It wasn't bad. I think this was in my first ever Blu-ray and 4K pickup video that I ever done on the channel. I think it was okay. Very, very cheesy at times and stuff, but not bad. Next up, Poltergeist. The first video I ever done of this horror collection, I missed this one out and I did own it at the time. I have gone through the shelf about 10 times here. I'm pretty sure I've got every horror film here. Tobe Hooper movie, who obviously made the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Steven Spielberg worked with him on this film, I believe. It's kind of sad, this young girl, and she's died now. She died at a very young age, which really, really sad when you watch this film, because I always think of that. But it's not bad. There's some iconic movie horror moments in here, like you can see on the front. She gets sucked into the TV and stuff. The woman, I forgot her name, who comes to try and help the family out. She was a great character. Next up, I didn't know whether to include this, but I think the first one definitely has horror elements. So I won't get them all out the box set, but I'll just talk about the first one really, and that is Predator. I do think it is quite creepy the way this monster type alien thing is just scanning them and following them, camouflaging around them in the jungle. Arnold Schwarzenegger is amazing in that movie though. Stick around. But yeah, I was on like whether to include it, but I did just for the first one really. Next up is Prom. Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. Next up is Prom Night. I'll leave that one in. Next up is Prom Night. I know I watched this not long ago. Jamie Lee Curtis. Not a bad movie. Actually, it's a nice little addition as well. Nothing really happens until the last 30 minutes, the third act. It's all mostly build up. But I think it's a killer at the school or something. It wasn't bad. A decent little slasher film. Next up is one of the greatest horror movies of all time, and that is Psycho. Alfred Hitchcock's best movie, in my opinion. Just love the way it's filmed. The way he's directed this movie is fantastic. Creepy ending when Anthony Perkins reveals his mother, basically. Won't say too much, but I'm sure you've all seen this. You didn't see that coming halfway through either. The shower kill scene in this is iconic movie moment, iconic horror movie kill really. It's nearly a perfect film for me. It might be a 10, I don't know. Every time I watch this it gets better and better, but what a film this is. So well made. Alfred Hitchcock actually stood outside cinemas telling everyone not to reveal the ending to the others going in. That's how dedicated he was. Next up is Psycho 2, probably one of the best sequels ever made to a horror movie. It was always going to be hard to top that first one, but Quentin Tarantino actually said he prefers this film over the original, so what do you make of that? This is basically Anthony Perkins, who has been rehabilitated, and he comes home, but he doesn't quite know what's happening. There's people dying around him and stuff, and he can't think if it's him or someone teasing him and whatever. I won't say too much, but I highly recommend this. It's such a good horror sequel. Next up we have Pathology. I just bought this years ago because it was cheap and I'd only just started collecting Blu-rays. I think the director of this wanted to make pornographic films and he said no, so he had to make this. There's a lot of sex scenes in this that he just basically felt like they were there just to be thrown in. I didn't like this film whatsoever, I'm not going to lie. Next up is The Purge. Now, this is a concept that I thought could have been done better, and they do that in the second one, but it's not a bad movie overall. Just think it could have been better than what it is. I thought it should have took place outdoors and stuff. Basically, this is one day of the year where everyone is allowed to do what they want to let off some steam, including murder people, which is a terrifying concept, really, especially when you think of some of the people out there in the world now who would be up for that. I was on a live stream with a guy called The Filmmaker, and someone sent a question in saying, if the purge was real, would you lock yourself indoors or go and kill people? I was just like, what a question that is. How do you even answer that? Well, I did say I'd stay indoors. Next up is The Purge Anarchy, the second one in the Purge franchise. I do think this is slightly better, but I don't love it as much as some people. But like I said, this one takes place outdoors, which is what they should have done with the first movie, I think. The first one is definitely more of a home invasion film. This one is just chaos on the streets. Not bad. I don't own the third one, but I have seen it. Next up is Prowl. Now, I thought this was going to be terrible because it's from the same movie label that done Fertile Ground, and they just sold these films for very cheap, straight to VOD. And this is a vampire movie, but I thought it was okay, actually. I think it's a guy in a lorry who's got a vampire in the back or something, or he is actually a vampire himself, the driver, something like that. But I remember thinking this was okay, actually. Next up is A Quiet Place. Now, the start of this film is brutal, isn't it? The second one is on the horizon. It's actually been brought forward instead of back, and I'm looking forward to it. But this one is basically, if you make a noise, these big monsters that have took over Earth will just come and kill you straight away. So yeah, they've got to be very quiet and stuff, these characters. It's post-apocalyptic type movie. Emily Blunt is great in this. I'm really looking forward to the second one to see what it has in store, because it looks like it goes to Origins and then to now, flips back and forth, and that'll do me. I like movies that do that. Next up is another David Cronenberg movie called Rabid, and this was really good, actually. I always seen this on sale, not on sale, but available to rent in the video store. I always remember this cover, and it always intrigued me, and that happens for like 1 second in the film. It's just a quick shot. It's not even a main character or anything. But basically, this is about a woman who, I think she's growing an arm or something, or yeah, she has a terrible accident on a motorbike, and she gets a modified skin graft, and an extra organ comes out of her armpit and starts killing people and stuff. It's really weird, but a good film. I think it was actually very well done. Next up is Ready or Not. This film just asks you to have a fun time. It's about a woman who marries into this rich family, Samara Weaving here, and they have to play a game on the wedding night, and if you get hide and seek, basically the whole family comes and hunts you and tries to kill you, and she is unluckily dealt that card. It's a fun film. I really like this one. Definitely worth a watch. Next up is Raw. This is about a vegetarian girl who eats meat for the first time and starts to get a taste for human flesh. I won't say too much no more, but that probably explains what this movie is going to be like for you. I thought it was quite good, actually. A little bit of an underrated movie. I think it's a French film. Next up is Red Dragon, the prequel to Silence of the Lambs. I remember liking this. It wasn't amazing or anything, but a good like thriller crime type movie. I can't remember too much about it, but I know Ed Furlong is in this, I believe. Sorry, Ed Norton, who's one of my favourite actors. I wish he was in more movies. Next up is Red State, a Kevin James film. Not Kevin James, the guy, Kevin Smith, who you might know as Bob in Jay and Silent Bob. This is basically about a religious cult who just go crazy and try and kill these characters. I thought it was really good, but the only problem for me is the ending. It's very abrupt, and it's like they ran out of money. I can only guess that's what happened. Next up is one of the most recent movies into my collection, and that is the Arrow version of Wreck, a found footage horror type zombie movie that is so well done. It's basically a fire department get called to this block of flats, and this video crew is following them and just showing them everyone what they get up to on a night, and a zombie outbreak has happened in this apartment. Really, really well done. Such a good film. I heard Wreck 2 is really good, but I haven't seen that one yet. Next up is The Resident. Now, I think this is about a landlord who is spying on a girl who lives in a flat, I think, but I can't quite remember. This one doesn't stay vivid in the memory. I haven't seen it for a very long time, to be honest. Next up is the Resident Evil 4 movie collection. I'm really looking forward to the new Resident Evil adaptation of the video games, because apparently it's going to stay true to them video games. This just doesn't. It just does its own thing. Didn't work for me at all. When I go back to the first one, it's not too bad, but at the time I was so disappointed in it. At least Resident Evil Apocalypse does include the Nemesis and stuff, and does introduce Jill Valentine, but these films really don't cut it for me. I don't even know why I own them. Probably because I love the game so much. I've just got them on Blu-ray. Next up is the Ring collection. I watched The Ring for the first time last year. I thought it was decent. I'll just show you right there. There is The Ring. Very, very creepy. You know, I forgot her name in this. The girl who's sort of the villain who comes after everyone. But really good concept. If you watch this video, you've got 7 days to live, this cursed videotape, and you get a phone call straight away as well. And this woman's son watches it by mistake, and she's got to try and figure out how to save him. Next up is Ring 2. I didn't like the sequel at all. Thought it was an absolute mess. They tried to be too ambitious and just didn't pull it off for me. I thought it was a really bad movie, actually. Next up is Ring 0. Picks up a little bit. Tells more of a prequel story to... I'm going to get any... No, I'm not going to... I forgot the girl's name. This girl here. I'm sorry, but it goes back to her origin stories and what become of her. Now all this happened and took place and stuff. It was interesting. Definitely better than the Ring 2. But the Ring is definitely the best one. So that is the Ring collection. I don't own the American remake. I don't think it's been released on the Blu-ray here. Next up is Rubber. This is about a film... Sorry, this is a film about a killer tyre. I'm not even joking. It's ridiculous. It's not very good. I didn't really like this. It's more of an indie type movie, but I thought this was stupid. I like stupid films, like Killer Clowns Out of Space, but they've got to be executed well. That for me just wasn't. Next up is Rosemary's Baby. I've done a top 20 horror movies you must own in your collection, which I'll leave down below as well. Actually, I'll just probably leave my collection playlist and it'll be in there. I put Rosemary's Baby in there. I watched this for the first time a couple of years ago and I was blown away by it. Actually, I thought it was really good. All built up to a very, very good climax. Mia Farrow is such a likeable character in this. She's so sweet and innocent. But all these other characters around her, there's something not quite right with them, including her husband. Really, really worth a watch. It stands the test of time. It's like a 60s movie. Next up is Salem's Lot. I only got this for Christmas off my fiance because she knew I wanted to watch it for so long. Nice little double cover there. This goes on for 3 hours. But I thought it was good. There were some creepy moments. I can imagine watching this as a kid and being terrified of this, especially when the vampire's coming straight up to the window when that kid's in bed. It's a good story. I just think it could have been executed a little bit better there. It's more. I think that this might have been a TV movie. I'm not quite sure, but not bad. Not a bad vampire film. Next up is another movie I didn't know whether to include in this horror movie collection, but I did because IMDb said it's horror, but it's more of a thriller, drama. It's one of the most shocking films ever made, so I'll put it in. And that is Salo, Pier Pasolini's movie, who was murdered a year later after this film. I don't know if it's because he made this movie, and it's so shocking. There's tongues cut out, there's feces getting at. It's got everything in this film. It's basically about 4 rich guys who take a load of teenagers hostage, or these 18 and 19-year-olds, and just use them as slaves, basically, and they have to do what they say or they'll be killed. It's brutal, but I don't remember it being great. It was more of a 5 out of 10 movie for me. Next up is another one I didn't know whether to include, but IMDb said it was horror again, and there is some horror elements to this, and this is Santa Sangre by Alejandro Jodorowsky. Hope I haven't butchered that name there. This is basically about a circus folk, and this woman, I think she gets her arms chopped off or something, and she uses her son as her arms, and they go around killing people and stuff like that. But there's much more to it than that. It's such a well-made film. I was surprised how good this was, actually. Next up, we do have another franchise. So here we go. I'll just get them all down. Saw. This is in my top 10 horror movies of all time. I love the concept of this movie, where these two guys just wake up in a bathroom and they have to find a way out, but they're chained and there's a game going on. The ending to this film is probably my favourite ending of all time. I actually type it in on YouTube and watch it over and over again. I love how the music kicks in, it all unfolds. Brilliant film. Brilliant film. Next up is Saw 2, one of my favourite horror sequels, actually. This is definitely the second best Saw movie. This all worked for me, and I didn't see that twist coming. Even though the first one had a big twist, this one is another great twist, and you sort of forget about it until the end, until it happens. Great characters in this, and really, really clever sequel. I liked it. Saw 3 started to go a little bit downhill here for me. I think this was the one with all the pigs sort of getting mashed up into liquid and stuff, and that guy's drowning in them. I think it's this one. It's not bad. It's not bad. But Saw 1 and 2 are definitely better. Saw 4, I think this is where the worst one out of the first 4 movies. I didn't like this. I can't quite remember too much about it, but I thought it was getting a bit stupid here. Saw 5 picks it up a little bit with the death traps and stuff. I think there's one where everyone's head is just chained to this bomb type thing and it could explode if they don't do what they say, but it's a much more bigger game and stuff. I think it's this one anyway. I thought it was slightly better than Saw 4. Saw 6 picks up again. I thought this one was better than Saw 5 and 4. I think it mainly takes place around a businessman, a selfish businessman and stuff, and the death scene at the end with all these acid and pipes and stuff is brutal. One of the better Saw movies. Saw 7, the worst one in my opinion. This is very low budget compared to all the others. It's just not very well shot at all, and a ridiculous film that just didn't work to me. Tries to overcomplicate the story, bringing Jigsaw's wife into it and stuff. I didn't like this, thought it was terrible. Next up is Jigsaw. Now a lot of people say this is the worst one, but I don't agree. This one is actually way better than Saw 7, Saw 4 and 5. It's kind of... This one might be the one that actually has all the heads attached to the chains. I can see it on the back. Sorry if I got that mixed up. Need to rewatch them all and review them all on the channel. But I remember liking this one. I don't think it was bad at all. Some decent death scenes and stuff. Yeah, I like Jigsaw. I'm looking forward to Spiral. To be honest, that could be a good spin-off movie. Next up is Scanners, another David Cronenberg movie. I didn't like this. Thought it was really boring. He's hit and miss for me, David Cronenberg. He really is. Suppose some of the scenes with the heads exploding and stuff look kind of cool, but I'm not a big fan of Scanners, I'm not gonna lie, guys. Next up we have another franchise. I have reviewed all these on the channel. However, when I reviewed them, I was very early into my YouTube days, so they're not the greatest reviews in the world, but I do pick them apart and stuff. If you want to check them out, they'll be down below. Scream. Now this reinvented the horror movie slasher genre, didn't it? I mean, we were getting them every 2 minutes and people started to lose interest. However, this sort of parodies them and is clever the way it does it. You know, it really does pick everything up again. It knows it's a horror movie by the rules that are explained and stuff in here. And Stu is such a good character. I love him. One of my favourite characters from the whole Scream franchise. Next up we have Scream 2. Solid sequel, in fact. Not as good as the first, but there's some great moments in here, like at the cinema and stuff, where these, you know, that couple, I think one of them's husband, yeah, they're both killed at the cinema. It's great stuff, really well done. At the Stab premiere, and Neve Campbell, you know, the killer goes after Neve Campbell again and all her friends, and there's a death involving a camera van, which is, when you see the aftermath of it, it's brutal. But the only thing that I don't like about the Scream movies mainly is Neve Campbell. I don't think she's a good final girl. However, she does definitely get better as the films go on. Next up is Scream 3. Now, this is the weakest of the franchise, but still watchable. But there's some ridiculous moments in here. Like, they put Jane Silent Bob in there. They put Carrie Fisher playing herself. They have a ridiculous kill that could never have made sense unless the killer, you know, had planned it to perfection and he had to count on other people doing what he thought he might do. It was a ridiculous scene. It's the kill where the whole building blows up, basically. But it's okay, it's watchable, it's watchable. Now, Scream 4 is definitely, for me, the second best in the franchise. I thought this was really picked up really well again. The killer in this, who I won't name, is just absolute psychopath. But I thought this was a good sequel, and I'm looking forward to Scream 5 for sure. Next up is a film, I didn't know whether to put it in here. It's more of a thriller, but I think the last 20 minutes definitely turns into a horror film. And that is Seven. Brad Pitt and Morgan Freeman are brilliant in this as the opposite ends of the spectrum detectives. You got Kevin Spacey in there, who a lot of people don't like to hear that name no more, understandably so. But the last 20 minutes is definitely where this movie picks up. They've been looking for this guy all the way through it, and then he just hands himself in. But what is to come is totally unexpected, and I won't ruin the end for you, but that is some climax to a film. Next up, when I was talking about House 3, the horror show about the guy who gets executed and comes back, and there's another movie in the horror collection like that, it is this one, and that is Shocker. Horace Pinker, what a brutal guy he is. He just kills everyone. So he gets executed and comes back for this family that he's been after, basically. But there's so many deaths in this movie, so many gore scenes and stuff, and he is such a strange villain. Drives around in a cable TV truck, and the whole theme of this film is electricity, as you'll see if you watch it. Next up, one of the best horror films ever made, in my opinion, and that is The Shining. Stanley Kubrick's visionary masterpiece. Stephen King doesn't like this movie, fair enough, but I think what Stanley Kubrick did with this, the imagery on screen and stuff, was amazing. Jack Nicholson is brilliant in the role of Jack Torrance, and even when there's so many creepy moments, but even when the hotel maintenance guy just looks at Danny and says, "How do you like some ice cream, Doc?" when he's just looking at him, that all worked for me. It was so creepy, even though he's not a bad character. And some scary moments in this, the first time I watched it, I was like, whoa, what happened there? And then it'll just black the screen and say Tuesday. And I was like, oh, I'm watching this in the dark, get the lights back on. But really, really good film about a man just going into complete insanity. Next up, I'm going to remember her name now because it'll be on this, Jodie Foster. The Silence of the Lambs, another probably one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Some may say it's a thriller. It got turned into a thriller after it won all the awards, but I totally disagree with that. There's people's faces getting bit off, there's women getting skinned alive. Well, not alive, but getting skinned. That's a horror movie to me. I really like the dynamic of two different killers in this. You got Hannibal the Cannibal Lecter and Buffalo Bill, and Jodie Foster has to sort of use Hannibal the Cannibal's help to catch Buffalo Bill. Really, really atmospheric horror movie with a great score. Next up, a horror comedy, Shaun of the Dead. I didn't love this when I watched it, but I would like to go back to this actually because I think I'd appreciate it a bit more. At the time, I was just like, why is everything got to be a horror comedy these days? And there was a lot of it coming out back then, but I think I'd appreciate this on a second watch. Next up is Shrooms. Not great, to be honest. It's just a bunch of kids going to eat these mushrooms and tripping out and seeing things. But I'm not really a big fan of films with dream sequences and things that aren't happening and stuff, and this is full of that. Next up is Silent Night, Deadly Night, Part 1 and 2. I thought the first one was a really good Christmas horror movie, actually. Some great kill scenes and stuff. Some creative kill scenes, but the second one is the whole first movie and then its own. It's only like a 40-minute movie because it uses so many flashbacks from the first film, and the actor in it is absolutely horrendous. But I feel bad for the guy. He was sort of tricked into doing that. They told him to overact and stuff because it'll work, but it doesn't. But nothing against the guy, but it's not a great performance in this movie whatsoever. However, the second part of Silent Night, Deadly Night 2 is really good actually because it does its own thing, and even though he is a bad actor, you can't take your eyes off it. Next up is Sinister, a movie that creeped me the hell out. I didn't like it when these characters were throwing all these videotapes on and stuff because I was just like, oh, this is so creepy. Basically, families getting watched by this killer, and then he kills them, and you see them all on videotape, and Ethan Hawke has moved into this house with all these videotapes are just lying there, and he's going through them all. Really, really creepy stuff. One of the scariest movies I've ever seen, to be honest. Next up is The Sixth Sense. Groundbreaking at the time. I don't remember loving this movie too much, but I think it was okay. Haley Joel Osment gave a brilliant performance, and Bruce Willis as well as his doctor. You know, it's got a big massive twist in there. You probably know it by now, but I won't say anything. But it's a decent movie from M. Night. I think it's M. Night Shyamalan, is it? Yeah, it is. Pretty certain it is, yeah. Really, really good film by him. You can always expect a big twist, can't you? But Sixth Sense, not a bad movie. Almost there now, guys, at the home stretch. Next up we have Slayer. Now, I'm sorry there's some movies in this collection I just don't like, but this is one of them. I was expecting so much from this film, especially going by that cover, but it was just stupid and didn't make sense. The ending was so ridiculous. I was like, what the hell is that about? It's not great. It's not a great movie at all. Next up is Slugs. I thought this was okay, about a bunch of slugs just taking over the sewer works in this city, basically. I thought it was okay, enjoyable film, very, very low budget, but not bad. Next up is Species. Now, this is about an alien who's basically sleeping with men, but she wants to reproduce her own species on Earth, and this team of scientists are after her. It's kind of a B movie, but it's grown into, a bit of a well thought of movie, to be honest. I think it's very B movie the way it was made, but it's got big actors in there and stuff, so kind of works. You got Ben Kingsley and Michael Madsen in here. I like this film. I think it's really good, actually. Next up is Shallow Grave. I can't quite remember too much about this, but I think these characters find a dead body and keep it in the house. I think Danny Boyle movie. I'm not even quite sure if it's pure horror, but I'm sure there's horror elements in there. A British film, Christopher Eccleston as well in there, and Ewan McGregor. I remember actually liking this, but it's been a while since I've seen that film. Next up is Split. Now, I haven't included Unbreakable in this, I don't think. But this is definitely more horror focused than Unbreakable, I feel. James McAvoy is playing so many different characters in this, like 23 personalities, which is unbelievable, actually. He does so well in this movie, and the last few minutes have a great twist, but he's starting to grow into this monster that wants to take over all his personalities, basically, and he's becoming this absolute, this monster is overtaking him, basically. So it is a horror, I feel. Next up is Split Second. A lot of killings are happening around this city, and Rutger Hauer is on the mission to find what is happening, but it's more than a human that's capable of this stuff. It feels like an 80s film, but this was actually made in 1992. Not a bad film, nice addition there from 101 Films. Next up is a bit of a horror comedy, and that is Stitches. This is more of an independent film, and this stars Ross Noble, who is a comedian here in the UK, and he's basically killed at a children's party by accident, and he comes back years later to kill these kids when they're older at another party. But there's one moment where he actually comes into the house and goes, "It's time to party." I think this is actually a decent movie, but some people might think it's ridiculously bad. I think it's watchable, you can have fun with it. Next up is Straw Dogs. I remember not liking this film too much. I thought it was very overrated because I'd heard so many good things about it, but it just didn't really work for me. It was a bit of a mess. However, I did much prefer this one, Straw Dogs, the remake. I thought this was a much better film. There's a lot of remakes in this collection. I've just realised that I do prefer over the original, which is weird, but I definitely think this one is definitely more watchable. I wasn't expecting much from it either. Next up is The Strangers, a home invasion film that is kind of creepy, actually. But I was expecting a little bit more from this because a lot of people were saying, oh, it's so the scariest film ever and stuff. It's not, but there's some creepy moments, and the masks and stuff look great. Next up is Suspiria, another movie I was disappointed by. It's got a great score. When I say disappointed, it's not bad, but I think it's very, very overrated. However, I can appreciate it for what it is. The main actress in this was really good, actually. I'm sure she follows me on Instagram. But there's a moment in this film where someone's trying to break down a door, and it's the longest breakdown door scene you will ever see. It goes on for like 4 minutes. Next up is Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. I'm not a big fan of Tim Burton. I love his Batman movies, but I think he's declined heavily as a director. This wasn't a bad musical, but not really. It's a horror story turned into a musical about a barber and his wife, and he kills people and she puts them in the pies. Classic story. Next up is Tenebrae. They think this is about a book writer, and someone's killing people in the same way that they do in his books. It's a good Italian horror by Dario Argento. I remember thinking this was more like a 7 out of 10 film. But it wasn't bad. I preferred it to Suspiria, to be honest. I think it's the same director. Next up is The Task, another low budget movie that I didn't expect much from because of After Dark originals, and they made Fertile Ground, or brought Fertile Ground out. But this is okay. It's like a big game, and you don't quite know if the game's serious or not, but it's okay, not bad. Now this one is subject if it's a horror or not to your what you define as horror, but I think this is leaning towards horror myself. As The Terminator. Now, if this guy was using knives instead of guns, it would be classed as a horror film, because he is just slaying everyone in this film. One of the best movies ever made, definitely in my top 20 top 20 films of all time. Now, I've just included it because I don't quite know if it's a horror or not, to be honest, but it's definitely got a lot of horror elements in there. It's quite scary at times. Imagine him coming after you. Next up, the greatest horror film of all time, in my opinion, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is expertly put together by Tobe Hooper, and I don't think he ever quite matched this movie. I don't know if this was kind of a fluke or whatever, but the way he's made this film is perfect. It's so good. The only problem I've got is some of the characters. It's near masterpiece for me. Leatherface, such an iconic horror movie villain. So many great moments. And what I like about this is more scary to me than most other films in this pile, because it's based on a true story and it's made to look like it could really happen. That is terrifying. Next up is a movie I didn't love as much, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, the Arrow version box set here, nice box set. This definitely goes more down the comedic route, and the costume design and makeup effects just didn't work for me. The first 10 minutes is, if you can make it past that first 10 minutes of that guy just making his stupid noises, you'll be in for an alright time. It's not a bad movie, it's just not as good as the first at all. A disappointing sequel, but not bad overall. It is watchable. Next up is The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake. A lot of people do prefer this over the original. I don't agree with that, but it's watchable. It's not a bad remake, to be honest. I remember this was one of the first horror remakes to come out, and I was so excited to watch this. It does go in a little bit of a different direction. But I think the sheriff in this is more scary than actually Leatherface in this movie. Next up is Texas Chainsaw, a film that is ridiculous in plot. It totally forgets all the other sequels and takes place straight after the first one, and then jumps about 50 years later. It is kind of ridiculous, but it's watchable. I just couldn't get on board with them trying to make Leatherface out to be a likeable antagonist. Sorry. Next up, probably the second best horror movie, second best zombie movie I've ever seen, Train to Busan. I only watched this for the first time last year. It did appear on my top 20 first time watches of 2020. So fast paced, full of action. This horror outbreak happens as soon as this train leaves the station, and it doesn't stop there. It's just so well done. I was expecting it to be good because I've heard so many good things, but I didn't expect it to be that good. It exceeded my expectations. Highly recommend it. And this is one I've reviewed on the channel as well. Spoiler free as well. Next up is another disappointing sequel, Train to Busan Peninsula. Had a very good start, a very good end. It's all a middle ground I didn't like. It's just like these crime bosses overtaking the city, and they have sports involving the humans and the zombies, and they're all betting on it and stuff. I didn't like that at all. It's not a patch on the original. Watchable, but I didn't like it too much. Next up is Them. This is a 1950s horror movie about giant ants. More of a family-friendly film, as you can see. It's a PG. I thought this was okay, but it's very dated. I mean, I don't mind 50s films and stuff, but the effects on the ants just making the same noise over and over again was kind of grating in your ears. Not a bad film. Next up is The Thing, some people's favourite horror movie of all time. I think it's a solid 8 out of 10. It never quite hit me the same as it has with some other people, but I appreciate the feeling of isolation, the atmosphere. The practical effects in this are unbelievable for the time. They still beat some of the special effects you see today. And a really good film by John Carpenter, but it just doesn't hit me as much as it has with some people. However, I do appreciate how good of a film it is. Next up is Triangle. This is a very strange concept. It basically takes place on a cruise ship, and I can't say too much about it because it will ruin the movie, but it's not bad. I think it got a Groundhog Day type feel to it, but it's been a long time since I've seen this one, to be honest. Next up is The Tortured. This definitely tried to cash in on the Saw franchise and the Hostel franchise by just having total torture all the way through the film. And that's basically what it is. However, the ending is really, really good, actually. A really good twist that I didn't see coming at all. Bill Moseley's in this. He's really good in the film as well, from small scenes that he's in. But it's not... I didn't expect too much from this, but I thought it was better than I thought it was going to be. Next up is a 2020 movie. Now, this is more of a thriller, but I included it anyway, and that is Unhinged, the Russell Crowe just having road rage, making this woman's life hell. And this was one of the most surprising movies of last year for me. Lockdown had just reopened the cinemas and stuff, and this was a 2020 film. When I was looking up what was on the cinema, I went, let's go and see that. 2020 film, the cinemas are open, Russell Crowe going crazy, and it worked. I wasn't disappointed. Really, really enjoyed this one. Next up is Under the Skin, kind of like Species, an alien, a female alien going around and just consuming male characters, basically. Scarlett Johansson. It all takes place in Glasgow, I believe, or Edinburgh. I think it's Glasgow. Not the type of film you'd usually see from here, but they done well to get her on board because it feels very independent and low budget. I don't think it's as good as what some people say it is, but it's definitely good for the imagery and stuff, and some shocking moments, especially at the seaside at one point. Next up, we have another box set. Now, I recently watched all of these movies, and that is the Universal Monsters box set. So you got Frankenstein, Dracula, The Mummy, The Invisible Man, The Wolfman, Bride of Frankenstein, Phantom of the Opera, and Creature from the Black Lagoon. Now, the only two I didn't like really were The Mummy. I thought that was really boring and not well done at all. And Dracula, I was expecting more from that, but it wasn't very well made. However, it was the first one, so yeah, you can understand why it kind of felt dated and stuff. But I thought Frankenstein was really well done, actually. I think I put it in my top 20 horror movies you must own in your collection, because it's an iconic movie, really. Everywhere you go, you just see Frankenstein in horror-themed places and stuff, don't you? The Invisible Man was probably my favourite, along with the best werewolf movie, I feel, and that is The Wolfman. It just edged American Werewolf in London for me. I thought that was so well done. Lon Chaney was great as The Wolfman. The Invisible Man was another one that I really enjoyed. Bride of Frankenstein wasn't bad. Not a bad sequel to Frankenstein. Creature from the Black Lagoon, I was kind of disappointed with that. I expected a little bit more. Phantom of the Opera was one that I didn't think I was going to like at all, but I actually did enjoy it. I thought it was really, really well done. Next up is another Jordan Peele movie, and that is Us on 4K. I actually like this better than Get Out, I'm not going to lie. I just thought it was a better concept, more clever, better cinematography, and better directed, and more well acted as well. Elizabeth Moss in this movie as well, from The Invisible Man. Basically, it's a family that look like another family, and they knock at their house. How creepy is that? That worked for me. I thought it was great. Next up is The Wicker Man, a film that has never hit the right note with me. I just didn't really like this film at all. Thought it was frustrating to watch because I'd heard so many good things about it, and I didn't see the big uproar about it. But the last 10 minutes is definitely worth watching it for, because that was great. Horrible ending, if you like. Next up is a bit of a family-friendly horror movie. And I say family-friendly, but this could scare kids. I watched this not long ago, and it's still heavy going, the first 10 minutes of this movie, and that is The Witches. One of my favourite films of all time. Timeless movie. When I watched it not long ago, I just loved it. I watched it just before the remake to refresh myself, even though I didn't need to. I know it word by word. This is so much better than the remake. Angelica Houston is the Grand High Witch. As good as Anne Hathaway was, she's so much better than this. The practical effects work better. The witches are better. You know, they're more sinister and creepy. I love it. I love this movie. It's amazing. Next up is Wolf Creek. The villain in this, John, I think his name is so menacing. It just basically takes place in the Australian outback based on true events. I remember reading about the true story of this. But yeah, some shocking moments, some upsetting scenes, and like I said, the villain of this is just he's really, really good in the film, but he's just a horrible human being, really. And next we have Wolf Creek 2, a decent sequel. Actually, I really enjoyed this one. It's a bit more brutal than the first. And at the end, it was kind of weird to me because it has a link to my hometown of Liverpool at the very, very end of the movie, which is kind of weird. But I thought this was a really good sequel. Now, I really want to check out the TV series because I thought it was going to be a whole remake type thing, but the villain of the movie, I think his name's John, is in the TV series as well, and it's on Shudder now, so I might check that out soon. Next up is The Woman, not the Arrow version. This was a movie that came out of nowhere for me. I didn't expect it to go in this direction, but it's basically this family find a feral woman, and tie her up in the basement, and the family are kind of more weird than her. But yeah, not a bad film, actually. Very underrated. Next up, The Woman in Black with Daniel Radcliffe. I think this was an okay haunting type movie. I thought it was okay. But it's definitely more towards kids can go and watch it and stuff. But it is quite creepy in places. Good story. But I haven't seen it for quite a long time. Next up is Vacancy. Now, this is about a couple who go to a motel and they find a videotape in there of people being killed in that very motel and they can't leave. So it's all basically a snuff movies for business that all take place in this hotel room. It's not bad, actually. I enjoyed it. Next up is You're Next. Now, this was a surprise for me. This is a home invasion movie as well, I think, but this girl just kicks ass. She is so good. There's so many good death scenes and it's brutally violent. Such a fun movie. I highly recommend this one. Next up is one that I watched just last night, and that is Zombie Flesh Eaters. This defines retro zombie movies that are cheesy in the 80s, but I liked it. It all takes place on an island. I've seen it before, and it won't be the last time I rewatch it because I had such fun with it. The characters in this are really good as well. The zombie makeup effects are decent. There's a scene where someone's eye is gouged out with a spike. It's horrible to watch. A bit dated, but works. However, the best moment of this film for me was a zombie fighting a shark. It was great. There's a score in the background all the way through it, nearly in every scene, but it works so well. Love Zombie Flesh Eaters. I always have memories of that and Dawn of the Dead. My nan used to babysit us, and she always used to bring zombie movies, and it was either that or Dawn of the Dead, and we used to just watch them as kids. It was great. Next up is Zombieland. A bit of a horror comedy, but I had such a fun time with this. I love Woody Harrelson in this film. He is so good. I love the dynamic of the chemistry between all four characters. Emma Stone, Jesse Eisenberg as well. Forgot the young girl's name. Abigail Breslin. Such a fun film. And Jesse Eisenberg is scared of clowns, and at the end he has to fight a zombie clown, which is just really, really good writing there. And next up is Zombieland Double Tap. I had another fun time with this movie. I think I prefer the first just a little bit, but Woody Harrelson back to his best here. They go into the White House and everything in this. It's so well done. Really, really good horror comedy. And we are at the final stretch now, guys. This is just my quick showing of my TV horror series. I own Bates Motel Season 1 and Bates Motel Season 2. I do plan on getting 3, 4 and 5. One of my favourite TV shows ever, this. The guy who plays him, Freddie Highmore, was great as Norman Bates. And Vera Farmiga is the star of this show. This is the best I've ever seen her act. The best character she's ever portrayed. Highly recommend Bates Motel, especially if you like Psycho. It's more of a modern take on Psycho. This is a really, really good series, guys. And next up, we do have The Walking Dead, the complete first season. A very, very strong first season, in my opinion, by Frank Darabont, I believe. Second season is even better. It all takes place in a barn, and it really worked for me. It's the characters in The Walking Dead that are so good. The complete third season, probably my favourite, because the governor is introduced into this, and he is one of the best villains I've ever seen put on screen. So many good characters in this show. The complete fourth season. Now, this is the last one I watched. It ended for me in that crate when they all get locked in. That's where it ended for me. I haven't seen any more of it. And I do have the fifth and sixth season, which I haven't seen. I would like to get round to them though, but I've heard The Walking Dead is really trailing off lately, so that's not a good sign, but I would like to go and rewatch them all again. I'll definitely watch season 5 and 6. And that is it, guys. That is my full horror movie collection 2021. Maybe I'll do this again next year. That was such a long video, but I hope you all enjoyed it. If you are still here now, I really do appreciate it, because I know it's been a long one, but I had such a fun time talking about these movies. Is there any films that you think I need to add to the collection? Let me know down below. What did you think about some of these movies? Comment down below. I will reply to you all, I promise. I always try and reply to everyone. And if you want to subscribe, it's up to yourself, because I've got a lot more collection videos coming. I do lots of reviews on this channel and stuff. And I'd just like to have a big variety of things going on the channel. Now, my next collection video will probably be either my Arrow video collection or my 4K collection. Don't quite know yet, but they will be slightly smaller collections than this, so I might be able to talk a little bit more about each movie. In fact, my 4K collection is actually grown quite a bit now, so maybe not. But if you want to stick around, maybe subscribe. It's up to yourself. Thank you so much to everyone who watched all of this video. It means the absolute world to me. I had such a fun time making it. Thanks so much, guys. And if you want more collection videos, they'll be down below. If you want to see any Blu-ray 4K pickup videos, they'll be down below as well. And I'll leave my horror revisited playlist down below as well. There's a few movies in here I have talked about that I have reviewed on the channel. Thank you so much, everyone. Take it all easy. I'll see you all next video.